Welcome back to the Inside Scoop with Captain Mike Genoun. It's Friday, July 18th, 2025. Man, this year is blowing by. Guys, first, let's talk about what you could expect offshore as far as a forecast is concerned. 15 to 20 today on the ocean side here in the Keys. It's a little bit breezy, seas 3 to 5 foot. It's going to diminish a little bit later in the weekend, but you could expect it to be a little bit choppy here, certainly throughout today, tomorrow, and into Sunday. It's going to start to calm down by Sunday for sure. And as next week progresses, it's going to get nicer and nicer and calmer. So it does look like there's a really beautiful stretch right on the horizon here, but you may have to deal with a little bit of chop over the next couple of days. Remember, it's easterly. It's blowing from the east. So when that collides with the Gulf Stream current, 3 to 5s can quickly become 4 to 6s, 5 to 7s, and even 2 foot seas can easily be 3 to 5s, so just keep that in mind. Pay attention to where that wall of the Gulf Stream is. Take all of that into consideration. Have a good understanding as to what's going on out there as far as not only weather patterns, but patterns in general, where that Gulf Stream is. And remember, that meanders in and out. And there's apps, certainly our TZI boat, our Furuno system, we're monitoring the current live like that. So there's some stuff out there. Look, I want to talk to you about a lot of things here this week, guys. I would definitely want to talk to you about the Fisher report, of course, but I want to start off with the ICAST show. I'm just returning back from ICAST. For those of you that don't know, once a year in Orlando, there is a huge trade show, a fishing trade show. It is an industry-only show. It's not open to the public. It's not advertised to the public. And you've got to know somebody to get in, or know a tackle company, or be involved in the industry. Media, of course, are welcomed. But it's a one-stop shop for anybody and everybody who's related to the both freshwater and saltwater fishing industry. And it's where a lot of the retailers introduce new products for the upcoming year. It's where they make a lot of deals with buyers and retailers. That's basically what it is. Wholesalers, all that kind of stuff. But it gives us, the angling community, an opportunity to walk the floor, to mingle, to see, touch, feel, and to really get an idea of everything that's coming down the pipeline. And, if you watch my Instagram page, if you follow my Instagram page, you saw some videos that I did from there. You could walk around this show for days, okay? It's like 2 or 3 days. You could walk around the show for days and share all kinds of stuff. But most of it is basically the same. It's the same tackle that you've seen out there. There are some improvements, there's no question. There are some innovations on the horizon. And it's interesting to see all of that come together. There's some stuff that I think is the most ridiculous junk in the world. But on the other hand, there's some stuff that you're like, why didn't somebody think about that sooner? Okay, so just keep an eye on all of that. You'd also be astounded to see how big the freshwater industry is compared to the saltwater industry. There's a very, very heavy influence on freshwater, okay? Their equipment is so sensitive, so light, but gosh, it's just a different game, especially that competitive bass fishing. One product that stood out was a liquid type of scent that you apply to your lure that makes the lure more visible on your fish finder. In freshwater, they have these fish finders that are practically painting pictures of what's happening underneath the boat. It's practically a live video, live view, live stream. I don't know what they call this stuff. But it's ridiculous. You're not even looking at the water any longer. These guys are just looking at the screen, looking at their lure. And, oh, here he comes. Oh, no, not that one. No, that's all right, that one right there. I mean, it's a little bit ridiculous to me. But again, it's all good. Everybody does things their own way. Good for them. One thing that stood out, that popped out to me, was hooks. I came across all of the hook companies. Gamakatsu, VMC, Mustad, Owner, and more. And I see that there's so many different hooks. It just reminded me, right, that there's literally dozens and dozens and hundreds of SKUs of hooks. of different sizes, but different shapes, different purposes, but very little education going on hooks. Nobody's teaching you really how to select those, the proper hook out of such a vast array of hook options. So certainly I don't want to turn this into a hook, seminar, but I want to mention a couple of key factors that are going to help you, because remember, on the inside scoop here, this is much more than just a fishing report. And you know that if you've been following along. We cover a lot of the different fundamentals that are going to make you a more successful angler across any venue. And it's the small details that make a big difference, and hooks is one of those details, right? I mean, think about it. It's the connection point. The line might keep you attached, but that's the connection point right there in the corner of that fish's mouth or down his throat or whatever it is, that hook. So there's a lot of considerations when it comes to hook selection. The size, of course, the size doesn't, bigger isn't always better when it comes to hook size. I promise you that. And today, hooks, the gauge of the hook is thinner and stronger than it's ever been before. So that allows us to fish stealthier, lighter, okay, with a more natural presentation. However, we also have to balance the strength of the hook. So it's not only the size of the hook, but it's also the strength. We have to balance it to our bait. You don't want a hook that's too big for the bait that you're fishing, especially a live bait, because you may kill that live bait or restrict its movement. So you have to take all of these different factors into consideration. Style of hook, may it be a J hook, a circle hook. There are circle hooks that are in line, and then there are circle hooks that are offset. So you have to keep that in mind. Tournament fishing requires inline circle hooks, which have the least chance of gut hooking a fish. You're going to get them in the corner of the mouth every time. So just remember to balance all of those factors out, okay, when you are selecting your hooks, because it can make a very, very big difference. And again, look, that's a 9.0 inline tournament circle hook. It's also available in 8.0, 7.0, 6.0, 5.0, 4.0. So just very small little increments, very small little differences from one hook size to another. But at the end of the day, it has to balance out with all of your tackle. I don't need a 6X hook, an extra strong tuna hook, if I'm going to be fishing 20-pound test and barely applying any pressure. Why in the world would I need a hook that could withstand all of that heat, all of that pressure without bending? So that's something to keep in mind. Whereas, sword fishing, this is an 11.0 Southern style tuna hook. We typically fish 10.0 hooks on our swordfish baits, but a big bait requires an 11.0 hook. So very, very common. Stainless steel, okay, versus non-stainless. That's going to make a big difference. First of all, it's not going to rust out and be disposable, so to speak. But more importantly, it's incredibly strong and stiff, okay? There's no give. There's no bend. You can count on that hook. I promise you that, to land the biggest behemoth billfish in the world on that hook. So, all of these different factors have to be taken into consideration. And they all apply to everything that we're going to talk about right now in our fishing report. Because you can be right now on the Reef in the Keys, where I'm going to tell you for mid-July, right now the hot bite is the mangrove snapper, guys. Mangrove snapper fishing has been excellent. It's blown up. I've talked to you about it the last few weeks, and it's now wide open. Okay, so if you're going to go out there and get in on the mangrove snapper, now is the time to do so. All right, we've talked about fishing the jig heads. I want to reiterate, right on the bottom, let that jig, let that 1/2 ounce or 5/8 ounce jig, 3/4 at the most, the 1 ounce jig, just too big of a hook for those mangroves. Speaking of hooks, right? So hook size not only is applicable when fishing a standard hook, but it's also applicable on artificial jigs and lures, but that's a topic, a different subject altogether. That mangrove bite is strong, okay? It's strong. They're biting, they're eating. If you cannot find them, literally in 60 minutes, get up and move. You're in the wrong spot. okay? Because they're not everywhere all of the time. So get up and move, look for those 90-degree angles, look for those sharp ledges, look for areas that have typically produced keeper mangroves, big mangroves in the past, because they're creatures of habit, and those same ledges, rock piles, coral heads, etc., will typically hold fish again season after season or year after year during, this summertime season here. So that's really the hot ticket, with the possibility of a mutton snapper mixed in, no question. There's some muttons on the wrecks. There's some guys that are super dialed in, put in a lot of time, catch some muttons on the wrecks here. The mutton bite continues to be much stronger further down the island chain. Key West being the epicenter. Dry Tortugas, excellent mutton fishing right now. Out at Pulley Ridge, the mutton's being caught at night and up on the ledge. However, that's just leaving a little bit to be desired as far as the muttons are concerned. On the wrecks too, this time of the year is when we see the big AJs. We see a lot of king mackerel. Not I don't want to say a lot like wintertime run, but at any time you can, literally hook a kingfish, okay? And there's some other bycatch around the wrecks, certainly worth checking out. However, for the upcoming couple days, you may want to stay focused on that reef bite with that forecast, being 3 to 5s, seas to 6 foot further offshore. On the reef, in 30 to 70 feet of water, I think you're going to be just fine. If you venture further off looking for the dolphin, like so many guys do, there's a lot of dolphin still around, mixed fish. Absolutely, if you put in the time, you're going to find them. If you can get your hands on live bait, bingo. You control them. Small chuggers, feathers, the Zacatec extra smalls have been proven to be deadly. Anything in that size range, so to speak, you're going to do well. Naked ballyhoo is a go-to around. There's a lot of scattered weed, and the further you push offshore, the more life you're going to see. All right, I'm telling you, you break that 1,300 foot barrier, it's like a light switch, and it's a different world out there. So as you're heading offshore, if you don't find those weeds, those birds that all lead the way to fish, keep pushing south, or depending on where you are in the Keys, keep pushing further offshore, maybe east, maybe south. And look for those birds. What we are seeing a lot of right now is just billions of bonitas. There's like a massive bonita migration going on. So it's a great time of year to target bonitas. A lot of good reasons to do so. First of all, we know bonitas make exceptionally great bait for so many different species. We use them in a variety of ways for swordfish baits, bonita strip baits off planers, and trolled with little squid skirts and things to that nature is absolutely a deadly tactic, okay? And something that I feel like is underrated here in the Keys is pulling those bonita strips. It seems to be much more popular in Miami, Broward, into Palm Beach, further up the coast, and for good reason. It's such an incredibly effective tactic. Here, I find that guys tend to lean more toward the live bait. The lot of guys kite fishing, obviously, during the winter season, the spring. But don't hesitate getting out here and pulling strip baits, especially off the planers, too. Because those things are just deadly, and everything eats them. Everything eats them. So, and if you're going to fish it off a planer, a long leader, okay? Fish 100-foot leader in between the planer and that bonita strip that you're pulling down the line there, okay? 60, 80-pound leader material between the planer and the strip bait. Okay, just keep that in mind. So it's long, it's stealthy, a lot of elasticity, and very effective. That's how you do it right. And you'll be able to target a wide variety of species. Sword fishing remains strong. It's one of those fisheries where I think I don't want to say the least popular, but by numbers, the least participated in, because it's so far up here in requirements to make it happen. You've got to be dedicated. You're running way offshore. You're burning a lot of fuel. You're putting in all of that time, generally fishing 1 or 2 rods, typically 2, and just waiting for that one bite. But I'll tell you what, how exciting is that fishery? Fishing that tip rod, working that tip rod while constantly keep an eye on the buoy rod. I don't know what's more excited. Is it when the tip rod gets bit and you're reacting to that, or when your buoy just falls over and you know you got one? You know, in either scenario, it's just a great feeling, and it's the culmination of all of your hard work paying off, because it is a lot of hard work to get out there and do this right. The rods, the reels, you know, we fish these Chaos Rodzillas, you know, on our heavy trolling rods that we use for nighttime sword fishing. For daytime sword fishing, heavy, you know, 6 foot, 6'6", different action rods during the day, and hooker electrics with Tiagra 80s. That's our choice in a reel, loaded with either 65 or 80-pound diamond braid. That makes up your typical daytime swordfish outfit. But it's an expensive venture. You know, you're looking at about 10 G's a pop for rod and reel. That's before fuel, bait, all the other accessories. So I stress to people, look, if you really want to get in on daytime sword fishing and you've never done it before, I can't encourage you anymore already. Like, you got to do a course, fish with somebody who's done it before, get out there, get some practice, get a good feel as to what's involved with daytime sword fishing before you go out and do it on your own, or before you make that commitment to, you know, say, hey, I'm going to be a daytime sword fisherman. But that's an option. Look, another thing I want to talk about while you're way offshore, this is Last Chance Tilefish right here. Closes on the ocean side July 22nd. So we already know Snowy Grouper's closed. Now, within a matter of days, Deepwater Tilefish here on the ocean side is closed. Now, I want to mention, guys, something really that I'm really excited about. At the ICAST show that I mentioned to you, I had an excellent meeting with the authorities, the National Marine Fisheries, and we were talking about, with NOAA, you know, a lot of different organizations, and we were talking about the Snowy Grouper being closed while Blue Line Tilefish is open in the same area. However, we're targeting these fish the same way. They swim side by side, they eat the same baits, and the release, you know, the healthy release rate on a Snowy Grouper is not that great. When you're reeling that fish up from 700 feet or more, barotrauma set in. And yes, there are release tools and descending devices and all of that kind of stuff. And you'll hear different opinions as to how many actually go on to survive. But it's not a great number, you know. Overall, if you weigh it out, it's not a great number. So why in the world are you letting us, you know, catch and kill these fish and not harvest a single one, not one? Okay, it just doesn't make sense. I'm telling you, it doesn't make sense. And I've written about this, I've commented about it. I said these seasons should coincide with each other. And that's exactly what's being discussed right now, is combining Snowy Grouper and Deepwater Tilefish into one bag. So in other words, when those limits are reached, when those, you know, authoritative figures pull the plug and say, hey, that quota has been filled and we need to shut down this fishery, that both are going to shut down simultaneously. I'm not saying I want shut down fisheries. On the contrary, as recreational anglers, you and I want to go out there and be able to catch these things. You know, why do I have such a short season here? Practically 10 weeks on the ocean side. We're in the Gulf of America. It's all year, okay? It just doesn't make sense. We're right around the corner from each other. It's the same fish. Come on. It's the same fish at some point, all right? They don't migrate huge distances, but certainly that fishery right there has an impact on this fishery. And just like we have an impact on that fishery. All right, so there's got to be more of a balance, you know, maybe take some numbers away from over there, throw it over here, extend the season a little. I don't know, but something has to be done. So I'm going to be the voice of the recreational angling community, and I'm going to get involved with these organizations at an even bigger level and really share what's happening out on the water, because they've admitted they don't know. Okay, they can take great guesses and have surveys and get feedback, but at the end of the day, their job is behind a desk, so to speak, data, management. It's not out being on the water. It's not seeing things with their own eyes. We haven't seen a cobia on these wrecks in X amount of months. They don't know that. Suddenly it raises eyebrows. Is it a water temperature issue? Is it a bait issue? Let's look into that. Just using that as an example. Okay, so they absolutely need real feedback from the water. And a lot of guys are hesitant to provide it because they feel like, hey, if I tell you what I really caught, you're going to reduce my limits even more. That's not really the case. I got to be honest with you. That's not the case. There has to be a balance that's made between the recreational anglers, the commercial fishing, operations, and I believe in these different bodies of water need to be managed better when they butt up against each other. In Monroe County, just as an example, come on, look how many different management bodies you have. State, you have federal, you have Gulf, and where exactly am I at any given time, and what regulation do I need to follow, and why can I do that? Or it can really be perplexing. So I'm looking forward. I don't want to rant and rave about this, but I'm looking forward to being the voice of the community and really helping what I believe is, I don't want to say lean the odds in our favor, but really maybe just level off the playing field a little bit. I think it's going to be in everybody's benefit with a number of different fisheries. So we'll see what happens with that. I'll certainly keep you in the loop. Guys, the hot topic, remember what I mentioned to you earlier about the mangrove fishing. There's one thing that caught my eye that I just want to mention to you. Look, don't go out there under gun. This is the time of the year where you're going to see some bigger fish on the reef. And remember what I said to you. Absolutely, you're going to have shots at muttons as well. My go-to rod when I'm reef fishing practically year-round, it's a Chaos Gold 7-foot SP 15 to 30. It's a 7-foot spinning rod matched to like an 8,000 size spinning reel, loaded with 20-pound braid, 20-pound top shot in the special clear diamond, nearly invisible, and then whatever I rig from that point. But that outfit is very light, it's very sensitive. I can have a lot of fun with even smaller snapper, but I've got something in my hand when it comes to hooking the bigger fish, and I'm going to. If I put in enough time, if I fish that reef hard enough and do it the right way, I'm gonna have opportunities at bigger fish. There's no question. So I don't want to miss those shots because one fish can make the whole day. Come on, you're out reef fishing, you're picking away at mangrove snapper, and you get a shot at a 28-inch mutton, all right? A 15-pound mutton. Man, that's a beautiful fish, and you'll be proud to hold that fish, And I'd hate to see you miss that. So don't go undergunned by any means, okay? Don't go undergunned. Look, there's a lot of other fisheries, It's funny, I speak with so many different people and from different areas that come down to the Keys and guys that, even live here, and all of the different tactics that everybody uses really fascinating, especially when it comes to offshore fishing because there are so many opportunities. We talked about the dolphin, we talked about swordfish, we talked about deep dropping. But let's not forget the humps, right? The humps continue to be hot spots throughout even the summertime. Yeah, it slows down a little bit when that water temperature climbs, but on certain days, it's going off. There's a combination of blackfins, skipjack tunas, a lot of action, But look, if you're looking for the bigger fish, I found fish deeper. Fish deeper on those humps. And remember to get into rotation. Remember to watch that flow. Okay, you guys are getting up ahead of it, drifting across it, especially if they're live chumming, and then they'll get back into rotation. All right, guys that are trolling often will troll around the hump, but you're gonna get guys that are doing this, and I just can't do it. I can't. For me, fishing a tiny spot with dozens of boats crisscrossing and half of them just, I don't know. For me, it's just not worth it. But it may be for you, okay? And it's not, it's not like that every day, especially on days like today when it's a little bit choppy. You're going to see it's going to keep a lot of those small boaters, the smaller boaters, out of there, okay? It really is. So, look, we're going to wrap it up. I'm looking forward to an outstanding week coming up. We've got some excellent trips lined up. Again, just coming back from ICAST show here. Didn't spend much time on the water in the last few days, but we've got a deep drop course lined up for Sunday. We've got a offshore big dolphin course, a bull dolphin course lined up for Monday, sharing tips and tactics on how to avoid all of these schoolies and really look for the bigger gaffer fish. And what a cool, course that is. It really is. It's a lot of instruction on trolling spreads, fishing bigger baits, covering a lot of water, positioning yourself in an area where big dolphin will likely be. But what a puzzle that is, right? Because a big dolphin can pop up anywhere. Come on, I don't care who you are. You know that as well as I know that. You can be in 100 feet of water and a 30 to 50 pound bull can just pop up. It's happened to me, and it's likely happened to you. On the other hand, you can run 30 plus miles offshore and not find anything but 16 to 20 inch schoolies. That's dolphin fishing, okay? And even though you want to go like that, maybe switch things up a little bit and say, hey, if I run further off, I'm definitely going to find bigger fish. That's not always the formula. It doesn't always work out that way. But day in and day out, I have to say to myself, you know what? I'm finding so much more life further offshore. You've got these deep water canyons and trenches and walls and so much structure, so much bait, so much life that my odds of finding bigger fish offshore skyrocket. So for me, I'm good at just blowing by stuff and going to where I believe I'm going to hit the bullseye. So should be an exciting day. Certainly will keep you up to date. Finally, our angling retreat, Captain Mike Genoun's Offshore Fishing Academy, is another week closer. All right, we are getting there. We're in the final painting stages, about to start landscaping. We've got some interior work to complete, but I'll tell you what, super excited, a really cool place. Looking forward to hosting great groups of anglers on a wide array of hands-on, all-inclusive instructional courses. This is going to be a destination like no other. So stand by. I want you to really see it firsthand, and certainly I'll share that as the weeks progress. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you out there.